Hey everyone, we are so excited to the reaction in the community for the pod. I need to take a moment of your time to tell you to please subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or hit the follow button on Spotify. We are in the humble beginning stage of our show and establishing a listener base is of paramount importance and will help us determine the frequency of future episodes. Thanks and enjoy the show. Hello, and welcome to Neuse Little Podcast, an audio program discussing the almost 50-year history of Neuse Little Theatre and the backstage antics and stories that come along with running a community theater in a small town. I'm your host, Matt Gore, and we are coming to you from NLT's stage and base of operations, the little log cabin located on the banks of the Neuse River in Smithfield, North Carolina. We lovingly refer to it as the Hut. Our 46th season, along with virtually every other community theater season in our state, has been postponed due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and in the meantime, we thought we would provide you with some additional content. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here with a very special person at NLT today. She has been a part of NLT since 2002 and has gotten to the habit over the past several years being the choreographer for most of our musicals, as well as the assistant director for a lot of Ruth Mills shows. She's also an accomplished actress and dancer, and also recently a grandmother. And I would like to introduce you today to fellow NLT alum, Patsy Castellano. How you doing, Patsy?
I'm great. Thank you for having me, Matt. This is great. And I love it so much. And I have 4 grandchildren, and recently, the new one is a great-grandchild.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No problem. I'm proud of this little Clara.
Yeah, I went to high school with Clara's father, Robert, and I knew him pretty well back then. And also, I like Rachel a lot, his wife.
And she is my granddaughter, my
Yes.
oldest grandchild, and she's amazing.
Yes, she is. I was in 1940s Christmas Carol with her, and she was in a lot of other stuff. She was also in the 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee show, which I thought she was very good in that too. And we'll circle back and talk about that because did you work on that show as the choreographer?
I did. I was the choreographer.
Okay,
And it was my one and only stint as a spotlight operator.
Okay.
It was a real learning curve for
I
me for that.
I bet it always is. We'll circle back and talk about that.
Okay.
So let's start out with your how did you get introduced to NLT?
Well, because of grandchildren, my husband Chris and I decided that we needed to move back to this area. And we were down here in 2001 in September at my son's house, and we were looking for a house, and we happened to see the Twin Towers and that horrific time in America on the TV while we were here. And so that made our decision to put everything else aside and move down here with family as quickly as possible. And that is what we did, and that's how we got here.
So you were living where at the time?
We were living in Roanoke, Virginia.
Oh.
And that's where I did a lot of plays with Showtimers, which is their community theater. So when we got down here, the first thing that I did, the first job that I got was teaching in Wilson at a charter school, and I was teaching dance kindergarten through 8th grade. And so going back and forth to Wilson from Clayton, where I live, was quite a trek. But when I saw that they were doing Arsenic and Old Lace here at NLT in 2002, I auditioned, and Ruth Mills was the director of that, and she kindly gave this strange person, unknown person, she kindly gave me the part of Aunt Martha. Now, not knowing anyone, I had no idea what great company I was in, because Darius was in it, Sammy was in it, Sean, Joyce. I got to work with Robbie, who wasn't around a whole lot longer after that. And it was the only time I got to work with Jamie, whose last name I've lost, because I think she moved out of the area.
It's White, Jamie White.
Jamie White. And it was just a really great experience. Unfortunately for me, the trek to Wilson, I worked there 4 years, and the workload got heavier. I was expected to do afternoon clubs with the students. So I had a ballet company and I had a tap team, and by the time those clubs were over with in the evening and I drove back home trying to come back to NLT to do a show, just wasn't physically possible. So it was 4 years in Wilson, and then when I moved to Wake County to teach at Hunter Magnet School Elementary, then I was able to start being part of NLT again. And I did The Man Who Came to Dinner was the first one I did after not having to work in Wilson anymore. And again, Darius Rose, amazing. And I got to work with Nancy Gibbs and so many people. It's hard to mention names because you always leave somebody out. So I'll stop there with that one.
Go back to Arsenic Olaus and tell me about your experiences.
Oh my gosh. First of all, it's a crazy, wonderful show. It's a lot of physical comedy. You get to be an old lady if you get to be Aunt Martha or Aunt Abigail. There's all kinds of misunderstandings and shenanigans. We had one scene that Joyce and I did that we called the crazy table scene. It was with also with Robbie, and it was a lot of moving plates and dishes around back and forth and little throwaway lines among the three of us. And it was one of those little scenes that we always seemed to jumble up, and so it just became known as the crazy table scene. But when you see Sean doing his very best creepy doctor, and you see Sammy doing his very best to channel Boris Karloff, and you have Darius being Teddy Roosevelt, it was an amazing experience to start me off.
Yeah, I bet. I like that show, Arsenic and Old Days. I saw it recently somewhere. I think it was in Mount Olive. But yeah, it's kind of like a dark comedy, and in a lot of ways. What character did you play?
I was Aunt Martha, one of the two sisters that have a very dark and dingy secret in the basement.
You're luring these unsuspecting men to your home and the promises of like tea and crumpets, and then you end up like poisoning them, correct?
Yes, we help our gentlemen who have no other family and no place to go. We help them move on in the world.
Indeed. All right, so let's cut to 2006 when you came back, and what show was that again?
It was The Man Who Came to Dinner.
Right, and what part did you play
Well, I
in
was
that?
the downtrodden, I believe is Mrs. Stanley. She's the wife of the house where the main character falls and injures himself, and then he ends up staying there, and I don't remember the character's name, but this was Darius Rose, and he played the whole thing. He was not feeling well that whole time, and he was just a star and a trooper. It was an awesome experience. And we had a lot of fun with backstage. It was a lot of cast. It was a big show, and it was very compartmentalized because I know Nancy was in it and Robbie was in it, but I never had any scenes with them. And Reggie played my husband in that particular show. That was my first experience working with Reggie, so that was a kick.
So these are both plays. What was your first musical with NLT?
Well, the first musical that I did with NLT was choreography. Ruth did Nonsense 2, and that again was Nancy and the fabulous Teresa Rose, and there were
Evelyn Perlman.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that was fun because it's only 5 people. That one only had the 5 nuns in it. So from a choreography point of view, you've got the whole stage to work with. And there's a lot of props and craziness because it is truly a comedy.
Now, what got you into like doing choreography, and I know you have a dancing background. Tell me about that. Tell me about your background in dancing.
Okay, well, Mother put me in a tap class when I was 5, and that started it. I went on, and in high school, I was lucky enough to have a high school that did musicals and did variety shows, and I was a Rockette, which is the drill team for high school. And then once high school was over, there was community theater in the area, so I did community theater.
What area is this?
This was Dayton, Ohio. And then, let's see what happened next. I went to Sinclair Community College and got an associate's degree in theater arts, and continued to take dance lessons this whole time. And so I was in several shows at the community college. And then we started moving around some. This was with an ex-husband who will remain nameless.
Okay.
So we moved down to Goldsboro, and I choreographed Godspell there, and this was a very long time ago in the 80s. And Gold Stocking Review, I was in that 1 year.
Okay.
So it's just been going on wherever I've gone. And then, like I said, in Roanoke, I did quite a few shows there. Joseph Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat and Little Night Music and on there.
All right.
And moved here and was so happy to find a community theater.
Mm-hmm.
It was an awesomely good surprise.
You're not the first person to come on the podcast and say that. I'll tell you that much for sure. Now, what was your next show after The Man Who Came to Dinner at Neuse Little Theatre?
Well, after Nonsense, I think it was The Bad Seed, which Mita Toole directed, and I got to be Monica Breedlove, who was a self-proclaimed psychologist, at least she thought she was. She was a real busybody and very boisterous and was always throwing psychobabble around. And again, talk about a show with some really dark messages. And the little girl that played Rhoda was amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love Samantha. I worked with her later on Miracle Worker and Midsummer Night's Dream. She's an excellent actress, and that was her first show here, right, Mita?
Yeah.
Yes, that was her first show with us.
Mm-hmm.
And they came from Durham.
Yeah.
Wow, yes. And somebody who's no longer with us that played the mother of the little boy.
Jennifer Hinton Cherry, I think was her last name.
She was so fun to work with, and she had such a dramatic part, but backstage she was quite a bit of fun to work with, and I'm sorry she's gone.
Oh, yeah. She had a sense of humor. It took a little while to get used to. She was very dry, but once you realized that she was, joking and you kind of got the feel for it, she was very, very funny.
And there's always a story that comes out when people talk about Bad Seed, about the door and Will Huntsberry and the doors. Tell us about that, Mita.
Oh, that was we put the doorknob that we put on the door to exit the apartment. It was one of those doors that you could push and turn and it would lock it. I don't know if anybody's ever had one in their house. I used to have one in my bedroom, I think, growing up, so I knew what it was. But we never replaced it. We just left it on the door, but didn't explain to anybody what it did because nobody had any problem with it. And then one night, Will went to go out the door, and the door was locked because he couldn't get it to unlock.
Now, when you say one night, you mean like during a show?
During a show, yes.
Yeah, you don't mean a rehearsal.
No. This was a performance, a live performance with the audience. And he went over and it was great because Rhoda threatens him, and he starts to panic, and he leaves the room or leaves the apartment. And so Will goes to leave the apartment like he does every night. And he goes and can't get the door open. And you watch him panic because he can't leave. And nobody can let him out because he's the one, the door's locked on his side. So he starts shaking the doorknob, and he turns around and looks at Samantha. And it's like, and then he turns around and he starts, and whatever he did, he wiggled the knob just enough to unlock it. And he opens it and smacks himself in the forehead. And I almost passed out. I laughed so hard. But yes, that was the night Will tried to knock himself out of the door.
Now, was that the same night when all the other debacles happened?
Quite possibly. We did have one night that was just a nightmare.
Right. There was a night that some of my lines about, she sounded like Fred Astaire because she had taps on the bottom of her shoes or something like that got lost because Will didn't come in or something. I'm not sure how it got lost. But Christine went on, and we lost that bit. So I come off stage, and I'm told by somebody that I'd got to get that line in there. At some point, that line has got to be in there so that people know that Rhoda has taps on the bottom of her heels. Well, no one tells Christine, and Christine's on stage constantly. So the next time I'm on, I add that line into what I'm telling her, and I'm watching her face, and her eyes are getting bigger and bigger and bigger because she doesn't know where in the world I am or where I'm going with this. And then I got back to where I was supposed to be, but I felt so bad with her because I could just see the color leaving her face. And Rhoda didn't come on, and she was at the Scuppernong tree, but she was actually talking to Will backstage.
Yeah, the problem with shows is it's almost like dominoes sometimes. Once one piece doesn't go correctly, it just everything falls, it sort of tumbles. I don't know that anybody really noticed except us, but yeah, there is a panic that gets involved when you realize that things are sort of started, you've pulled that thread and everything starts to unravel.
Yep.
Yeah, there's always like when during shows when things are just like, this is one of our off nights. This is one of our. It always comes in like a cluster of problems, and it's not just one thing.
Yeah, and then I'm sitting on the couch with Christine, and she's sobbing her heart out. And Mrs. Daigle, that's when she's supposed to enter, and she doesn't come, and she doesn't come. And then so she's crying, I'm patting her, I'm saying things that I'm making up out of my head. And suddenly we hear coming from downstairs, boom, 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 footsteps, slam, 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 slam. And she comes running up to make a late entrance.
And luckily you guys were on the second floor apartment, so it all worked.
Okay, so moving on from that one, what's after that one there, Patsy?
Also, Amita directed one, The Crucible, in which I was Rebecca, the old...
Rebecca Nurse, yes.
Yes, the old woman that gets blamed for witchcraft eventually. And that was interesting. Stephanie Varon had made this beautiful costume for me, a dark, about the color that Mita has on right now, this dark burgundy color, and she'd made that for me. And I know she'd made all those little hats and everything. The costuming was so fabulous, and the show was so dramatic. I loved it from that point of view.
Yeah. Crucible is a challenging show to do sometimes. A lot of people kind of like draw it out and make it very long and very dramatic, but I like Mita's version. Because I've seen a couple of different versions of this show, and I directed a version of this show later. But Mita's version always stuck out to me as more like, this is the history and what happened, and it kind of shies away from any fantastical supernatural elements that I've seen other productions do.
And she did that beautiful back projected silhouette scene that was really awesome, and
Which I stole from my version. I admit to openly stealing that.
I was so proud of the fact that we got it to 2.5 hours, I think. Matt got it down to 2. I still don't know how we got it down to 2.
Wow.
No, we do. No, I don't. I told everybody there's got to be no gaps between dialogue and stuff like that. And I was at a theater who people had never. When I told them, I was like, "Listen, guys, you got to know your lines. You got to know. No ifs, ands, or buts. You got to know your lines." And that took some people back. They were like, "Wow, really?" And it's like, yeah, because if not, it's going to be a really bad feeling when you're up there and don't know what you're talking about. Because there was this famous story about the first time they had done it, and CST had done the Crucible in the '80s, and this guy who had played the governor in the courtroom scene just totally went up and had no idea where he was at, and he looked at the other guys and was like, "Gentlemen, we need to confer." And then they all got in a circle and it was like, "Okay, I don't know where we are, so somebody help me out." And so they got in a little powwow, a little circle group on stage, and 5 actors were trying to figure out where they were, and they finally got back on track. And I was like, "That's not going to happen with my version. That's not going to happen." And so, yeah, we made dialogue and pacing a thing from day one on that one. But I digress. So, moving on from Rebecca Nurse, what was next for you?
I think it was 2012, Dixie Swim Club, and that was another real tight cast, only 5 people. I got to play a nun who is no longer a nun, but is also very pregnant. So I loved the comedy angle of that, because the entrance when this nun that the other 4 have been expecting to show up and they have talked about for the first half of Act 1, and then she comes in with this massive stomach was pretty awesome. I love that. And we were a really tight cast, and we kept together for a long time afterwards.
Nancy
and Teresa, and Mary Anna Morin, and forgive me for forgetting your name, sweet girl, because you were hilarious.
It was Sharon Pierce.
Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah, the biscuit. She gave the biscuit monologue.
Yes, she did.
Yeah, I remember working with Sharon on Ordinary People. I like her a lot.
The one that basically gets a round of applause every night.
Yeah. It's like built into the script. It's like Gary. She makes this very passionate speech about biscuits, and you're in the South.
You will pry them out of my cold dead hands, basically.
Yeah, and it basically every night, it got applause, and it's kind of like built into the script. I'm like, there should be applause here after this.
Yep, and she pulled it off with great aplomb and comic timing. It was awesome.
So that was directed by Ruth Mills too.
It was.
So at this point, you'd only been directed by Ruth and Mita.
True.
And what was next after Dixie Swim Club?
Next was Mita, was Sex Please, we're 60.
Okay, now we're getting into, yeah, I was the assistant director on that. I remember that show. That one that was actually a huge hit, but we were...
We should let Mita talk about how hard it was to get a cast for that.
I don't remember. What happened?
Did we have a hard time with getting a cast with that? I don't remember.
You had a couple people, you had a low turnout.
I did have a
and
low
you had a couple
turnout.
people who then decided that
Yeah, I had
they
a
weren't
couple people
comfortable
bail.
with the title.
Yeah.
Which is dumb.
Yeah, I remember. I had someone who was uncomfortable with the what she felt was the material, which turns out there's nothing in it. That's the title of the play is the raciest thing in the show. And then the other person, I think, actually had a conflict with work. She had just changed it, so that wasn't that she didn't like the material, and she actually came back for Red Velvet Cake War, so
Okay.
she actually did come back. But yeah, we did run somebody off because they were not a fan of the name of the show.
Didn't they see the name of the show before they showed up to auditions? I don't understand.
I don't know. But I have to tell you, I said this last time we mentioned it. It's a license to print money, quite honestly. There's nothing about that show. I mean, first of all, the title draws people in. And second of all, it is so funny. It is ridiculously funny.
So once again, I got to work with Joyce, I got to work with Teresa, with Reggie, with Darius, and who am I forgetting? Betty.
Oh, yeah. Betty Harris, but that's not her name anymore.
Yeah, she got remarried. It starts with an L. Yeah, I know Miss Betty. She's very sweet. She does nails and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
always has very, very elaborate nails, and she's such a sweetheart. Yeah, but I remember her and her new husband coming to see shows. They still come and see shows and all that.
Yeah, they do.
Now, so you're starting to work with like the same people, and at this point, you must have established a rapport with these people and a back and forth. Tell me a little bit about that. I mean, like with Joyce and Darius, you've worked with them multiple times, and Reggie was in that one, I remember. Tell me about the inner workings and how you guys kind of play off each other and what to expect.
Well, with Reggie, you just have to expect everything because Reggie is really great at creating his character and then getting on stage and making that character come alive and putting in Reggie babble so that you're not sure where Reggie's going until there he is. He's back on track with what he needs to tell you. Always sweet, always charming. He was my husband in Sex Please We're 60, or actually my fiance in that one, as well as Man Who Came to Dinner. Darius is a god.
He'll hate hearing that.
Teresa is astounding and amazing, and doesn't even sing in this one, and she's astounding and amazing. Joyce is so great to play off of. She's always cool, calm, collected.
Yeah, I've never seen
professional.
Joyce out of sorts ever.
No, not ever.
So what's after that one?
Then it was Nonsense Jamboree that I only did the choreography for again. And that one had Darius because that was the 5 nuns
And the
plus
friar?
Yes, the friar. And so that was great. And let me just say a word about choreography.
Please do.
Choreography needs to fit the people that you're hanging the choreography on. You don't start off with triple pirouettes and things that don't fit the character and don't fit the people. I have never worked, and I've worked with other community theaters and groups, have never worked with a better bunch of people, good-natured, ready to try anything that I think works for the dance. And if it doesn't work, we simply make it different. And if I've given them something that I can see they're not happy with, I simply change it and make it so that it fits them and they're happy with it, because it shows if they're not comfortable doing what you give them as a dance move or just a creative move. Sometimes I call it drive-by choreography. And so it works. And this group always has their heart wide open and ready to try anything.
Yeah. Adaptability is important when it comes to that, right?
Abs-
The ideas you have going into rehearsal might change by the end of it.
Yeah, that's what I have to tell people sometimes, because occasionally I get somebody will say, well, you're the choreographer, don't you know what you want to do here? And I'll say, well, what worked on my kitchen table, doesn't really work now that we're in the right space and I have the people and I know where you are at the end of this scene. So now I know how I need to get you into the dance, because there's a lot of staging that goes on to get people into a choreographed piece and to get them out of the choreographed piece so that they're where they need to be for the next scene. So that it's not a start, stop, start, stop. It flows from one thing to another.
Yeah, and the same thing can be said for just plain old regular directing.
Yeah.
The idea of a scene that you have in your head and that you block in your on a piece of paper, or might not work when you get into the actual space and actual blocking of it. And I think it's a very important skill for a director and a choreographer to have, to be able to go on the fly. You need to be able to
Absolutely.
plan it out and have it staged beforehand and have an idea of what you want to do. But the idea of going in there and saying, you know what, this isn't working, and totally tearing it up and then starting from scratch is also a very important skill to have, I
Right.
feel.
I always know what I think I want to do, but then I often find something that's better when I'm actually working it.
Right.
And I'm also usually here the whole time. I don't just come in and say, all right, I'm going to teach you this and other thing, and then I disappear. So I pretty much stay the whole rehearsal,
Yeah,
all the days of the week.
So you can see the evolution of your of the work the actors are putting in.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
how they're working with it.
And then when you actually get to costumes and more set pieces and props, sometimes the choreography that was going just fine suddenly takes a dive because of now you're dealing with a costume or a prop, or we have furniture that we didn't have before. So you have to be able to adjust so
Yeah.
that it suits the play.
Yeah. I know we must be getting close to it. We have to be. Something's afoot. It has to be close, right?
I think Music Man was next, and
Uh-huh.
that was a challenge just because that you do everything on the NLT stage.
Yes.
And then we took it to the community, the community theater.
How much time did you have in JCC before you guys went up? Do you remember? It can't have been more than a week.
I think we maybe were there 2 weekends.
I don't know. Did we even have rehearsals out there before we loaded in? I don't remember.
I think you did. There was at least
There was a couple.
We did, because I'm the one that fell over one of those wonderful benches that Sean made for me for the library scene. And then we did whatever it was scene that I was in, and the lights went down, and I went walking off, and I could see the exit sign over the side, so I thought had a clear path, and I slammed into one of those benches, and I was bruised from stem to stern. And then they put glow tape up after my debacle.
Well, you got to hurt yourself in order to get safety.
Right, yeah, but I think only those benches were there. So I think
Yeah.
we had a little bit of time before we moved all the big heavy things in.
Yeah, I don't remember. They must have been dark for some reason, because otherwise we probably wouldn't have been able to be in
True.
there. But
True.
I do know you guys practiced out on the river stage too.
Yes, we did as
What
well.
was your favorite scene to choreograph in Music Man?
Oh, it was definitely the library scene. If you remember the show, Marion the librarian is in the library, and Harold Hill is basically trying to woo her amongst all these teenagers that are sitting there studying.
Studying quote unquote
Yeah,
swish swish.
air quotes.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we had a similar scene with the music from the show, and we had enough young people that I was able to choreograph this library scene, and they would use their books, and we would pat the books in rhythm and slap the books on the tables and change things around. And Sean built these fabulous benches that were sturdy, and people could stand up on them and go back down. And then we had a rolling cart, so I got Marianne, Teresa Rose, to stand on that, and somebody else would push her. Harold would push her a little bit on this
Harold
rolling
was
cart.
played by John Clifton.
Yes. And so that was my favorite one. It came out really well. And again, everybody did exactly what I asked. And nobody said, no, I can't do this, and so it was great. It
What do
turned out
you
great.
do when you get that pushback? I know you said it doesn't happen a lot here, but obviously, just the way you're talking, it's probably happened before. I
But
mean, you don't
not
have to get
here.
into specifics. What do you do when it comes to that kind of pushback?
Not here. Well, I change it. So we'll tell me what it is that you don't want to do, and we'll figure out something else.
Right. And is it usually physical or just, just something?
Well, what comes to mind is a show that I did in Cary. The three girls had this like boogie woogie bugle boy, like a McGuire sister scene, and I had choreographed all the hand motions and things that went with that. And there one that was just didn't like it, didn't want to do it, but was doing it. So I didn't know any better until I went to see the show, and they stood there with their little threesome, and they sang their song and did none of the motions.
Oh, no. Oh, I don't like that. So what was decided that, like, they're just not going to do it because one person doesn't like it? Or?
Exactly. Yeah, one person didn't like it, so the director capitulated, and they didn't do it. But the rest of the cast did the other choreography that I had done for the show, and they did it with a whole heart, and it looked nice.
Okay, so after The Music Man, you said you had Annie Mame?
Right.
That version we did was not a musical.
No, that was the play, and I got to be Agnes Gooch, and that was one of my
Dear Gooch.
famous parts. Yeah, because she was so repressed and so awkward and so backward.
She's the girl with the glasses, right?
Yeah,
Oh.
absolutely. And I played her like this. I just talked as if I had a stuffed up nose all the time. And so there was a physical part. She was also pregnant. I seem to have a reputation for playing pregnant people.
Playing pregnant people.
So she also was pregnant toward the end of the show, and so that was fun. So there was a lot of sitting down and trying to get up off of couches and things. That was good physical comedy.
So with Annie Mame, we were introduced to a very talented actress named Leanne Bernard, who has come and done several shows with us, and I'm a friend of hers, and I've known her for a while now. And what was it like working with Leanne? Because she was in every scene, had like 18 costume changes. Oh, she was a trooper.
It was amazing. That was the first time I had worked with her, and the show had been in rehearsal for weeks before I ever got on stage with her, because Gooch comes in at a later point in the play. And Leanne is just one of those openly friendly people. She's never met a stranger, so she just kind of made me feel like we had been together for a long time. And it was really great. Even that terrible scene where Gooch has to take off her clothes and she's standing there in her stupid slip, Leanne made that work.
Because what was happening in that scene?
Because Auntie Mame wants Gooch to not look so Gooch-like. She wants her to clean up. And she says, take those things off. And,
Try to give her a makeover?
Right, exactly, trying to give her a makeover. So it was really great work with
I remember the night of I played a very small role in Auntie Mame. I was in like 2 scenes. It was a very large cast, but I remember being at auditions, and I'd never met Leanne before, and when she auditioned, I'm like, that's Annie Mame.
Yeah.
Like I just knew instantly. Like I've never met this person before, but I know that she will be Annie Mame, and sure enough, she was. And she's done other stuff. Next was like Blithe Spirit, right?
Yeah, Blithe Spirit, Madame Arcadi. Oh my gosh. It is just one of my most favorite characters ever, because she is so over the top and physical. And she's so into her crystal ball and her tarot cards, and everything is spiritual and occult. And it was just the seance scene. I definitely love the seance scene where I got to channel other spirits and pass out. It was just really a good time. I would love to do that show again sometime.
Yeah, I am familiar with Blithe Spirit because I actually did a director version of that too. It's a deceptively hard script. You kind of like get it, like, oh, this is a fun comedy about these erudite English people accidentally raising the ghost of someone's ex-wife, and it's just like, yeah, but they talk a lot.
Right, they do. The scenes between the husband and wife, those go on and on. They are very chatty.
So after that, we have Something's Afoot, correct?
Something's Afoot, and you were in that one with me as well.
Right. I played the butler. I died first. But I remember being part of. I'd never done a musical. I had done some musicals in high school before that, but that was the first musical I had done in quite some time at that point. I think 15 years or something along those lines. And I remember being very nervous about the dance choreography, but you were very gracious and very helpful. Because, you know, I'm a large man, and it's just dancing and stuff like that has never been my thing. But you made...
And you were great. Absolutely
I
great.
tried.
And that opening scene is a killer.
Well, it's the song...
Wonderful Weekend.
Wonderful Weekend,
Yeah.
yes.
Or
Everybody
Marvelous.
moving.
Maybe it's Marvelous Weekend. I think it's Marvelous Weekend. And yes, that's tricky. And of course, you had the wonderful Todd Johnson on piano. That man can do anything. He can make the piano get up, walk, and do a little dance across the stage.
Indeed.
So he was so kind and so helpful, and helped us all get through that opening number with all those entrances and exits, and trading places and passing props around, changing costumes in the middle of that song.
Because you were the choreographer, but you were also in it as well. And
Yeah, I was Miss Tweed.
Yeah, kind of like the female Sherlock Holmes or
Right.
Agatha Christie.
She's a spoof of Miss Marple.
Marple, yeah.
From Agatha Christie. And I've always loved the Agatha Christie books and the English drawing room mysteries. And this is everybody's at a mansion, and the land, the way back to the mainland is cut off, and people are dying.
Yeah, it's basically a musical version of 10 Little Indians.
Yes, exactly.
At the end of a music number, someone will die. Rest
Yes,
assured.
someone will die.
I think everybody died in that play. I think almost everybody died. in the whole
Everybody
cast.
dies.
Everybody dies.
Everybody dies.
I was the first one, and I remember dying, changing out of my costume, telling Steven I'm going to grab something to eat, and I'll be back in time for curtain call. And that's what happened. I would come back, change into the butler costume just for curtain call.
Well, of course, the whole funny part of that is that the butler didn't do it.
No.
Because he's the first to go.
Butler did not do it, and they sang that song over my corpse, and I had to
Yep.
stay
And
there.
we got to walk across you and around you and drag you off.
Yeah, I was worried about that. But no, you guys, everybody did a great job. So moving on now, what's your next venture?
Well, it wasn't in it, and I didn't direct it, and I didn't choreograph it, except it was Seniors of the Sahara, which Stephanie, I believe it was Stephanie. I was asked to create a belly dance for Kay
Hewitt.
Thank you. And she was so charming and so gracious and so funny, and she took what I gave her and she made it her own, and she was very well received. And so I keep that one close to my heart, just because it was an excellent show, hilarious, and because Kate was so charming as a belly dancer.
Love Kay. She was. I was in Curious Savage with her. She's a sweetheart.
Yep. Then we did, 2017, for me, you and I did 1940s radio Christmas Carol, where we were a bunch of different people. It was set up like a radio, but what was special for me is my granddaughter, Rachel. Rachel Goodwin was
Yes.
in it. She's a marvelous soprano, so it was the first time she and I had gotten to be on stage together, and we had a song that we did together, so that's close to my heart for that reason.
Yeah, that was a pretty song. Now, this is basically about a radio station that is doing a Christmas carol, excuse me, and they're bringing in this big shot actor who's kind of on the downtrend of his career to come in and play Scrooge, but he's dealing with stuff because his son just died in World War II, so he's kind of like dealing with it at the same time the show's going on, and so kind of chaos ensues.
Right. Randy Jordan.
Yeah.
He was amazing.
And his Cannon-winning performance, he was very good.
Yes, absolutely.
But I was introduced to a lot of people on that show. Now, remind me which character you play, because I'm blanking.
I was
I'm sorry.
Margie. I was one that sang the cute little elf song, or as I like to remember it as the stupid little elf.
Yeah. I remember the conga. What was it? The conga. The Hawaiian style song we did. That was a Christmas sun.
Oh my gosh, that one was.
That was hard.
That was hard. The New Jersey song at the beginning was the hardest one, and once again, Todd Johnson pulled that out of us somehow, because those
Newark,
were
yeah.
Newark,
yeah.
oh.
Yeah, every time we were like, okay, let's do Newark, everyone was like, It was just difficult. It was a difficult song.
Well,
And
that show had really difficult songs because it was not it's a sequel to 1940s Radio Hour, but 1940s Radio Hour is all songs you know.
Right.
And
These
then
are original.
he wrote these songs because he couldn't get the rights or something to the songs for the sequel or whatever. So he wrote these songs, and they are very difficult songs.
Yeah.
They don't fall off your tongue like the originals do.
Not at all.
There were a couple rehearsals where I would just have like a deer in headlights, like I'm trying. I don't know. This thing keeps falling. The hula skirt kept falling every single
Oh,
night.
yeah?
And I would just like toss it aside. Like I tried.
You had the coconuts and the hula skirts.
Yeah.
And then we dressed Reggie like a Christmas tree.
That was a fun show because I got to work with several people that are really that are close to me, and I'm friends with Greg Hill, and that's where I met him. And Greg's a really talented actor.
Yes, he is.
Yes.
And he had such a challenging role in that one because he had to do all the sound effects. He was a sound effects man, and then here he's been this happy-go-lucky guy, and then at the end of the show, he has this dramatic and very tender speech
Yes.
as he goes off to war.
I felt it was one of the stronger moments in the show is his little dramatic monologue. I think that's where I first noticed this guy. I was just like, wow, this guy's really good. I hope he sticks around. And lucky for us, he did.
Yes, indeed. Well, I choreographed Good Old Girls for Ruth after that one. That was 2017. And then 2018, it was the 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee. And that one was another challenging one as far as the music. It was a much more current show than we had done in the past, and
Yeah.
the music was very difficult, but we had amazing singers. Rachel was one of them. We had Greg Hill, we had Sean,
Annabeth Clark.
Annabeth Clark, and oh my gosh.
Teresa Rose. Mike McGee played the principal.
Yes. Becca.
Troy Jelly played the heavy guy that with the security guard.
Yeah,
Mitch
Becca was.
Mahoney.
Yeah,
I only know that because they say his name 100 times in the show.
and
Becca
He's the
was one of the
ex-con.
students.
no, 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee is one of my favorite shows I've ever seen. I was not involved in that show in any way, but it's one of my favorite shows I've been an audience member for. It's just everybody seemed to. It seemed like everybody took the material really seriously, even though it is a very high comedy show. But it requires dedication to do it right, I feel.
Yes, and musical ability, not just humming a tune, because a lot of those songs are like art songs because there wasn't a repetitive phrase or repetitive verse necessarily.
Like Sondheim-y type of like
Yes,
different
very
type
much,
of, yeah.
very much. And Sean had built this wonderful bleacher type bench for the kids to sit on, the adults playing kids. And he was willing to swing on a rope for me for a choreographic point of view, and everybody was just jumped right in, do whatever I asked them to do. And Ty, that played
Pearson's, I think is his last name.
Pearson. He was amazing. He did a little tap dance for me. It was just great. I was very proud of that show. And I got to learn some things about Spotlight that I didn't know before.
Yeah, you were telling me about that at the beginning of the podcast. You were the spotlight operator too. Tell us about that.
Well, I was challenging myself to see if I could even climb that ladder to get into that little nest up there. And that worked just fine. But I didn't have any kind of idea as to who I should spot and when I should spot them and when I should move it. And Mita gave me some advice, and let's say Sean gave me some advice, and then Ruth gave me some direction as to during this song, who should it really be on and when do I move it. And Mike McGee gave me some advice, and that, so it was a learning experience. It was a learning curve for me, but I was happy to pick up something new to do. And happy to do it again.
Yeah.
Doing Spotlight is it's an interesting experience because you don't want to do it. You really have to do it right. The way you've done, lights, sound, spotlight, all of that, any tech really, you've done a good job is nobody notices you did it. And so the spotlight is really hard because you're spotlighting something, but you really have to make it almost seamless. Like it's,
Right.
you also you don't want to go, oh look, here's a spotlight, boom, but you also have to make sure people the whole point is to focus people on what you want them to look at. But you don't want it to go, oh, look, over here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, luckily, the cast was so good and got the choreography down early enough that I had time to learn how to, at least for my maiden voyage, learn how to do spotlight. It's a lot heavier than I anticipated.
Okay.
It's a lot heavier to move.
Okay. So after that one, what was your next one?
Then witness for the prosecution.
We talked about this one last time. We told a story about the poor guy ripping his pants and stuff
Yeah,
like that. Yeah.
yeah.
And now you had to ad lib with Eric on stage. And
Right. Yeah, I was just like the Girl Friday secretary or whatever that character was. I think her name was Gretel or Gretchen, something like that. And that was really cool for me because I got to work with Stephanie and Mita.
And being
With Mita and Sean.
and being in an Agatha Christie play.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I love that very much. And let's see, then it was Mamma Mia.
Yes, we've discussed Mamma Mia a fair bit. Now, talk about it from your choreographer's perspective.
Well, we had a cast of like 1,000. We had so many people audition, and we just made it. We just tried so hard to cast as many of those folks as we could. And then, of course, then the challenge becomes, what do you do with all those people on a stage that's this size? So we used very little scenery, next to no scenery, for one thing, so that our scenery was people. And they could be on stage as much as they could. Everybody was gracious about coming to rehearsal. We did a lot of Saturday rehearsals because the choreography was harder. Plus, we used tracks. It was the first time I had worked with tracks instead of having Todd pounding out the music. And so let's do those 8 bars again. You had a track to work with, which as much as I missed Todd's input there and being able to rewind it to just a few bars, it was nice to have that full sound. You just really couldn't do ABBA proud without a full orchestra. And so having those tracks was great. I especially loved working with all the teenagers and the young adults that I have because the energy level was so high. And the dances, the energy level is probably I will say, that is the hardest choreography I've done on the stage because I had people that could stand up here and basically jog for 4 minutes straight and not be winded because they were young people and they were I had some that had a lot of dance experience, and so we did things with the clothesline and stuff like that, and the boys with the flippers. And we did some things where guys are rolling around on stage. I think I remember that the review said something about a probably too big of a cast or something like that, in a strangely small bed.
Well,
Yes, had to point out the strangely small bed.
but that review, I had a lot of more positive things to say too. It was all in all a generally good review. We've had critics from Triangle Arts and Entertainment come down and they've done it sporadically, not for every play. But if you ask them to come down, they usually will, and sometimes they'll come on down on their own. But it started with Wait Until Dark because I remember it was a big deal when they showed up the first time. I was like, oh, there's an actual critic here, you know.
Yeah, I can't remember. I don't know if Wait Until Dark was the first one they ever came to do or not, but people had asked them to come, and early years and years and years ago, someone had mentioned, to Robert McDowell, who's sort of the head of the whole thing, if he would come and do it, because he was the only one who was reviewing at that time, I think, except maybe Brian Wood in the Independent or something like that. And he said, well, if you'll, pay my way, pay for gas or something. And we're like, we're not paying somebody to come down here and pan us,
Yeah, we'll give you
Thanks.
we'll give you a free ticket, but we're not.
Well, and if you pay them to come down, I mean, he was just worried about his bottom line because he was by himself doing this and he was doing it, but I was like, if we pay you to do it and you don't like the show, and then if you do like the show, how do we know you liked it because you liked the show, not because we paid you to come?
Catch-22.
So we didn't do that, and he didn't come. He would go to Garner and that sort of stuff, and So after a while, whatever show we did that first time they came down, it was something that they were interested in doing, which is the reason why they came. And then it depends on the show. They don't come to everything, but they did Witness for the Prosecution. I know that they did Good Old Girls. In fact, we had two or three sets come and do Good Old Girls.
2 came for Safe.
And
There's 2 different reviewers.
And so it depends on the show. If it catches their eye, they'll send at least one reviewer down, sometimes 2, to come 2 different nights. But yeah, they've done us. They haven't, and they've never really just slammed us.
Mm-mm. No, they're always nice.
Every time I've ever read one, I'm going, oh yeah, I knew that was it.
If you read a couple, you can kind of check.
I knew that one.
Yeah.
I knew that one.
You can kind of tell the tone they're going for. You like one person will go like, all right, this was a good show, but now let's go to the department of the nitpicky, where he'll offer some mild criticism. Like this part didn't quite work, or I remember when one review, the one review for Safe, he criticized the audience for being too prudish because they weren't laughing. He was like the only one in the theater laughing. I was like, it's a comedy, guys, come on.
So the big thing for me in Mamma Mia, choreographing it, was my partner. I had Rick Herndon was my partner in that show, and he had a medical emergency.
Yep.
And he was desperately ill, and this was like 2 days before opening, and the mighty and wonderful Sean Braswell came in at the last minute and not only sang and did the lines of that character, but he did that dance with me where I was up on the tables, and toward the end of the show, Take a Chance on Me.
Yeah.
The name of the song. So it was a lot for somebody to just come in and pick up out of nowhere, and he was amazing.
All right. Well, I think we're going to put a pin in it there, Patsy.
Okay, yep, we're up to the year that got postponed.
Yeah, and we're recording this in the day before Thanksgiving, actually, and hopefully when we actually release this episode, I'll have to change the intro to like saying our current season is currently rehearsing.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah.
Let me put a quick plug in for all the youth programs, for the summer camp programs, because I've choreographed all those as well since Ruth started doing musicals for the kids. And so that's always good. We were supposed to do Annie Jr. this summer, and so that got COVIDed.
Yeah. Just couldn't work it out.
Nope, can't put children on stage singing in each other's faces with mask.
Well, it'll be back. It'll be back.
It'll be back.
Yes, ma'am. It surely will be. And we want to thank you for coming on this podcast and sharing your memories and experiences with us. It's very important. I appreciate it.
Thank you, and thank you for doing this so that we can keep in touch, because I'm sure everybody's feeling the pinch of not being able to be part of NLT.
Yeah. Well, we try. We do what we can. Just a little small light that's still there in the darkness there, and give it time. Yeah. A little stream of content coming out of NLT. We thank you for coming by here, Patsy.
You're welcome.
We're gonna go ahead and wrap it up there.
All right.
Credits for the show are your creator and host is Matt Gore. That's me. Producer and sound editor is Mita Toole. And music is by Cody Walker. Please like and subscribe to Cody Walker Music on Facebook and YouTube. He's a talented guy. He's local. And we will just want everybody to stay safe out there and have a happy holiday season. So from Neuse Little Podcast, I'm Matt Gore, and we'll talk to you later.